Welcome. Reading Goodnight Stories with Bored Grandma. Hello, grandchildren. Grandma here. Are you ready for bed? Do you have your teeth brushed? If so, then here we go. Tonight I will read to you my big books of fairy tales by Peter Stevenson. Retold by Louisa Somerville. Tonight's story is dedicated to nephew Jack. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, there was an old woman who lived in a tumble-down cottage with her only son, Jack. They grew poorer and poorer until one day, all they had left was their cow. "Jack," said his mother, "you must take the cow to market and sell her, or we shall starve, and mind you get a good price for her." The next morning, Jack set off for the market on his bicycle, with the cow trotting along behind on a rope. Along the road, Jack met a man passing by. The man looked at the cow, then said to the lad, "Will you swap your cow for some beans?" "No," Jack replied. "I must sell my cow at the market so I can buy food to eat." "But they're magic beans," said the man, reaching into his pocket and pulling out a few old brown beans. "Scatter them on the ground and they'll make your fortune." So in the end, Jack agreed to swap his cow for a handful of old brown beans. Jack put the beans in his pocket and went home. "Look what I've got," he shouted to his mother, holding out his handful of beans. But the old woman screeched, "Is that all you got for my precious cow?" She was so angry that she snatched the beans and threw them out of the window. She scolded her son and sent him to bed without so much as a crust of bread. The next morning, Jack woke to find a gigantic beanstalk had grown outside his bedroom window during the night. He ran out of the cottage to get a better look. The beanstalk was so huge that the top of it disappeared into the clouds. "I'm going to climb up to the top and seek my fortune," Jack said to himself, and he started climbing up the beanstalk. "Come back, Jack," called his mother, but higher and higher up went Jack. At last, Jack reached the top of the beanstalk. He looked up to see an enormous castle. Outside the castle door sat a huge giantess. Jack was so hungry that he walked straight up to her and said, "Please, will you give me something to eat? I'm starving." "All right," replied the giantess, who was feeling sorry for the lad. "But you better watch out. My husband catches sight of you, he'll gobble you up." The giantess beckoned Jack inside the castle and gave him a huge bowl of soup. Just as Jack was eating the last tasty drop, he felt the castle shudder with the approach of a thunderous footsteps. "Quick, hide," whispered the giantess. Jack slipped behind a mug of tea. In came the giant, sniffing the air. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread," roared the giant. "Nonsense," said his wife. "It's your dinner you can smell." Satisfied with the answer, the giant sat down and began to count out his gold into 2 bags. It seemed to take forever as he counted very slowly. At last he yawned and sat back in his chair. Soon he was fast asleep and snoring. Quick as a flash, Jack sneaked across the table. He grabbed one of the bags of gold. It was so heavy that he had to drag it to the edge of the table and then onto the floor. He dragged the gold out of the castle and all the way back to the beanstalk. Jack scrambled down the beanstalk with the heavy bag of gold on his back. "Mother, we're rich!" he cried as he reached the cottage door and poured the gold out at her feet. The old woman hugged her son for joy. "We have enough gold to last us the rest of our lives. We're wealthy now beyond our wildest dreams. So don't ever climb the beanstalk again, Jack," she warned her son. Jack nodded, but he knew that he wanted more treasure. The very next morning, Jack climbed up the beanstalk again. Once again, there was the giantess sitting outside the castle door. "Please shelter me," he begged her. The giantess couldn't help but feel sorry for the lad once more, so she beckoned him inside. Soon he felt the castle shudder and heard the giant shouting at the top of his voice, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." The giant's wife brought him a speckled hen. "Lay," ordered the giant. The hen laid a beautiful golden egg. The giant put the egg in his pocket and fell asleep. Jack tiptoed across to the table. Then he picked up the hen and made off with her down the beanstalk. Jack's mother was overjoyed to see the great pile of golden eggs that the hen laid outside her door. "We have all we need now. What with the bag of gold and the golden eggs, don't climb that beanstalk again. And don't disobey me this time," his mother scolded. The very next morning, however, Jack couldn't resist climbing up the beanstalk just once more. The last time he promised himself. Jack waited until the giant came out with a bucket. Then he tiptoed into the castle. Soon the castle walls began to shake, and Jack heard the giant roar, "Fee, fi, fo, fum! I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." The giant sat down and called for his wife to bring him his golden harp. "Sing," ordered the giant. The harp began to sing the most beautiful song. At first the giant listened to the harp's lovely music, but soon he fell asleep as usual. Jack sprang across the room and seized the harp, but as he made off with it, the harp began to wail, "Master! Master, help! I'm being stolen!" The giant awoke with a mighty roar, chased after Jack as he headed for the beanstalk with the harp under his arm. As he climbed down the beanstalk, Jack could hear the giant close behind him. The farther down he climbed, the closer the giant was behind him. As he reached the bottom, Jack shouted, "Mother, quick! Fetch the axe!" Jack's mother ran to fetch the axe. As soon as Jack reached the ground, she began to chop furiously at the beanstalk. Chop, chop, chop went the axe, until finally there was a great sound of ripping, and the beanstalk tore in half. The giant was left hanging onto the top half of the stalk. There was nothing he could do except shake his fist and shout angrily in his rage. But what with the 2 bags of gold, a hen that laid golden eggs, and a golden harp that sang, Jack's mother was more than contented and readily forgave her son's disobedience. Jack and his mother were now rich beyond their wildest dreams. "Let's buy a car, Mother," said Jack. So first they bought a car, and then they found they had enough money left over to buy back the beloved old cow, and plenty more besides. And Jack, his mother, the cow, and the speckled hen lived happily ever after. The end. Now off to dreamland you go.